All right, guys, so I'm going to be going over the day 9 solving by elimination notes. If you guys remember last time, we did elimination last Friday. If you guys go back here, if you didn't get it, make sure you guys get these notes. But just a reminder on how all this works. Basically, what you remember, you're looking for opposites, right? So I'm going to add these two equations together, but I need opposites. I need one in one equation. I need one variable to be positive and the other to be negative. And notice they're the same number, right? So right here, we're crossing out these threes and they're the same number, but then opposite signs. So when you add up a negative and a positive, you get 0. Okay, so that's the goal, right? So all of these problems we did on 5.5-8, all of them eliminated without having us to change anything. But there are some cases where you're going to have to actually change the equation before you're even able to cancel anything out. Okay, so I'm going to be starting right here on 5-9. I'll be going through these notes kind of in a PowerPoint, so just kind of follow along. I'm going to go over uh, just about 4 of these examples. I'm not going to go over this last one, but I will go over this one down here. Okay? All right, so make sure you guys get markers. Grab the blue and the pink markers so you guys can follow along. All right, so starting off with elimination, how do we do that? Now, first, remember, we need opposites, right? So in this case, if you look at all of these equations here at the top right in your packet, none of these equations have opposite x values or opposite y values. So we can't cancel anything. We have to change it. All right, so you'll see here it says step 1, multiply one or both equations by opposite x values to the entire equations. Now, you can do, in a lot of cases, you can do just multiply one equation, just change one. But the way I'm going to show you, you're going to change both equations, starting with the first one. And you see the question says, what would you multiply in order to eliminate x? So in other words, what would you multiply times this 6x here, and then another number you would multiply times 5x so that they would eliminate each other? Well, if I multiply -5 to 6, that will give me -30. And if I multiply 6 times 5, and remember that you have to distribute all this. So you got to distribute it here, you got to distribute it here, to the last number, basically all the terms, right? Okay, when I multiply this 5 times 6 and this 6 times 5, they're going to be opposites. One's going to be -30 and the other is going to be +30. That way, I'll be able to eliminate x, add up y, and find my first solution. Okay, so now the next one, down here, notice how the first term in all of these is 6 and 5, except for this last one, right? The only difference with this one now is that both of them are negative. They're both the same sign in both of these first examples. So this one, these two are both positive, and both of these are negative. So notice what I had to do. I'm sorry, I showed that a little too early. I had to actually multiply one of those numbers times a negative. So right here, I had to multiply not just 5, but -5 so that I got an opposite. And down here, I had to multiply at least one of these times a negative to make them opposite. So now the first one on top will end up being 5 times -6x, which is -36, or sorry, -30. And then this one down here, negative times a negative, those will become positive. So now they're opposites. And I need that every time. So the first two are examples of where they're both the same sign. In other words, one of these has to be negative when you multiply. Now, in the next one, you'll notice that this one is negative and this one is positive. So they're different signs. And that's what I want, right? I already want them to be different signs. So now when I multiply that 5 and 6, I don't actually multiply another negative because they're already going to be opposites when I distribute. Okay, and we'll see that more in an example in here and coming up. Okay, and this last one, 6 times 6x and 1x. Well, same principle. I'm going to, whatever is on top, basically, the 6, I'm going to multiply down here. And then whatever is on the bottom, the x, I'm going to multiply the top. And remember that x is a 1. So literally and also notice they're both positive. So that means that one of these numbers has to be negative. So here, that will become -6x, and that will become +6x. And that's what we need in order to eliminate. Okay, let's go to the next example. All right, so this is the kind of second example on your guys' page over here, this one here. All right, so now, again, we're focusing on by eliminating the x variable. Okay, so this x variable up here, the first one is 1 on top and the one on the bottom is 4, and they are both positive. So if they're both positive, remember that one of those numbers has to be negative. So now, so I kind of flipped a little bit. Notice on the top, I multiplied -4, and that will give me -4x. And the bottom, I did 1 times 4x, which is positive 4x. So now, when I multiply out these equations, and again, remember that you must distribute to every term. Okay, so that means pretty much you're going to be multiplying 6 times in the first step every time, as long as you're multiplying both equations. So now I've got this all multiplied out. Okay, I distributed the 4 to the x. I get -4x. -4 times 3y, that's 12y. Okay, and then this last one here, -4 times -2, that's going to be +8. And then I did the same thing with the this one down here on the bottom, which, as you guys might see, if I multiply 1 times this equation, it really doesn't change anything. Okay, so now I get to eliminate. So now finally I've got my opposite pair. Okay, one's negative, one's positive. I get to cross it out. You can see I've already done that there. Okay, so now I add up the -12y plus 5y. That gives me -7y. And then 8 minus 1, that's 7. And then divide by -7 both sides. And I get my first solution is y equals -1. And remember, as with all of these problems, once I have one solution, I have to plug this into one of the equations to get the next solution. So now I'm going to take this -1, plug it into the y of the first equation. You can see there I plugged it in there. So again, if you need to pause as you go through, go ahead and pause. And then 3 times -1, that's going to be -3. And then I'm going to have to add 3 to both sides here. And once I add 3 to both sides, I get x equals 1. And then lastly, I got to make sure that I write out my solution up here as 1 and -1. And again, it's +1 first because the x is +1 and the y is -1. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, so now again, this is the third problem right here to the right. Okay, again, I'm going to try to eliminate x. So I'm going to look at these two numbers in front, and I know that in the first one on the top, I'm going to multiply 4. The one on the bottom, I'm going to multiply 3. And they're already opposite signs. So one is negative, one is positive. So I do not need to multiply something out, another negative. So now you'll notice here, I've got 4 times -3, and on the bottom, 3 times 4x. Okay, and once I do that, this will be what my equation looks like. Now I've kind of jumped ahead a little bit. You can kind of copy all this down. If you need to pause the video, go ahead. But you can see here on that first step, on that next step, I eliminated the 12s, okay, because they're opposites. Again, that's key. One has to be negative in order to eliminate. And then I added up the y, so 8y plus 18y is 26. And then I did -20 minus 6, that's going to be -26. And then divide both sides by +26. Y equals -1. Take that -1, that gets plugged right into the next equation, right here, into the y. I chose the second equation just because I felt like that was going to be the easiest one, just because I wanted to avoid this negative on the 3. But again, it doesn't matter which one you choose, okay? All right, sorry. Then I've got -6 here because I multiplied the -1. And now, just like the last problem, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. Once I do that, I get 4x equals 4, and then divide by 4 here at the last step, and I get x equals 1. And then notice I end up actually getting the same solution as the last one, which ends up being 1 and -1. Okay, and again, it's always important. Make sure you write out the solution just like that. Okay, last example I'll go over here, or last full example. Okay, again, we're trying to eliminate x. And notice again now, they're both positive, so they're not opposite signs. Okay, so that means when I choose a number to multiply, one of them has to be negative. Okay, so the bottom is 4, so that means on the top, I'll multiply 4, and the bottom, I'll multiply 6. And I chose to do -4 on top. And again, you actually could do -6 here and then +4 here. It just makes sure that only one of them is negative if you have to do that, okay? Now, again, once I distribute, then I get these first two equations here. And notice how the x's now eliminate because they're opposites. They're both the same number, different sign. And then again, add up the y's. So 4 minus 6, which is negative 2y. Negative 36 plus 30, that's negative 6. And then divide both sides by negative 2. I get y equals 3. I take that 3 and plug it right in here. Oh, I realized I just made a mistake. If you guys caught that, notice how this is actually this is a positive. All right, so I got to fix this now. All right, so that means this is positive, which means that this is now negative 3. And again, I accidentally wrote a negative 3 here. All right, so then now what I have to do is actually add 3 to both sides. So instead of 6 over here, this is actually going to be 12. Okay, so make sure you guys make this correction. All right, now I divide both sides by 6. 12 divided by 6 is not 1, it's 2. All right, so now I got to write out a new solution. So now the solution will be 2, comma 3. Okay, just like that. Okay, now when I click the screen here, it's going to pop up what I had before. Don't pay attention to that. The answer is properly 2 negative 3. I'm glad I caught that while I was doing this. All right, so now the next one. Okay, so you can see 1, 3 is wrong. Okay, so don't copy that. Copy what I just did. All right, so now the last one is just an example of what would I multiply on both of these equations to eliminate x, just like we did before. Okay, well, the bottom one is negative 3, and the top one is positive 5, so I don't need to multiply negative, so that's good. So that means on the top, I'll multiply 3, and the bottom, I'll multiply 5. So up here, I multiply the 3, distribute that throughout the whole equation. The bottom will multiply 5. And then I'll end up with, this is the first equation. So this is the first one here that I just dropped down after I distributed everything. And then the next one is negative 15x plus 10y. This is the second equation that I multiplied after I distributed. Okay. So now we're good. Now we have opposites. Now we have 15x and negative 15x. And those will eliminate. So that's all I was trying to get at for this part, was just figuring out what do I multiply here in this situation. Okay, so guys, for homework, you guys finish this next page, day 9 homework. Here you're gonna have the kind of easier elimination where you can just eliminate right away. The complex elimination is where you have to multiply, and then this is substitution. You guys remember where you have to plug it in. Okay, so that's your guys' homework. All right, that's it.